The Lust card is very different from anything which we will see on the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, and in many ways this card is a challenge in itself. It's saying that where we would go for spiritual guidance and to follow a spiritual path need not be the mainstream, what people think, and what a spiritual leader should look like and what a spiritual path should teach may not be exactly, or in fact anyway, like what the mainstream spiritual practices would have us believe. This card is also much more highly connected to Thelema itself, and Crowley wanted to show this card as being part of the birth of the Aeon of Horus within the Thelemic belief system. As you can see, the Rider-Waite card, which would be in place of this, is very different. It's the card of strength, and it shows the lower instincts, the passions of the physical world, our animal self here as the lion, and it's been tamed and guided by the higher self, a much more light and flowery and pure being. And even the higher self has something above it. It's being guided by infinite intelligence, by consciousness, with pure spirit, as illustrated by the Lemniscate image. Over on the Tree of Life, this card connects Chesed to Geberah, so it's connecting mercy with power. These are very potent duality symbols, and yet also very high spiritual paths. It's talking about a real vibration of lust and of power, and the passion of the spirit, both in the physical world and in the material world, of course, with sexual pleasure and things as well. They may appear like opposite processes, mercy and strength, and yet of course it is going back to that whole duality that we've seen in the entire cards all throughout it. On the bottom of the card we can see our Hebrew character, and this time it's a character which represents the word Thoth. Thoth in the Hebrew alphabet is the serpent, and indeed it actually looks like the serpent, its actual character. There's two ways that we can interpret the serpent. We can interpret it as sexuality and the lower mind, the animal side, like we had on the Rider-Waite. The serpent is associated with what you may call the reptilian mind. It's associated with the physical world, and the lower earth, the serpent of course, is low to the ground, it crawls on the ground, and so a snake is a symbol of the solid world in that respect. And yet of course the serpent can also be the kundalini, which we've had in the cards before, this divine energy, the serpentine energy, which is said to rise from the base of the spine through the chakra system, resulting in samadhi or enlightenment. You can also see serpents at the actual top part of this card on the Thoth deck, which can symbolise growth, it can symbolise enlightenment, and it can represent, of course, a new type of passage in our lives, because a serpent sheds its skin, and so we're leaving the old behind and being birthed into the new. And the kundalini as well has a sexual aspect to it. It's considered to be the fire within, this rising from the low self to the high self. It's symbolic of the entire practice of enlightenment. We can also see at the bottom of the card the astrological association, and here we have Leo, the lion. Brings us back to what we saw on the Rider-Waite as well, that the lion is the king of the jungle. He's the king of beasts. The lion is a strong, powerful symbol. A lion shows strength, it shows leadership, and it shows courage. And of course, if we are to follow this path, this journey, the fool's journey of the tarot, we need to have those qualities within us in order to be able to get through all of the obstacles, and as well to appreciate all of the wonderful things on the path. And we need to have that strength to overcome the temptations of the lower world, if we're to leave that ego and so on, in order to venture up to the spiritual path. The female character in the centre of this card is the goddess Babylon, a Thelemic figure known as many other things, such as the Mother of Abominations, the Great Mother, and perhaps quite interestingly for this card, the Scarlet Woman. So Aleister Crowley actually referred to his own set of many lovers as Scarlet Women, and so this card actually shows an archetype of the Scarlet Woman, or the goddess Babylon, and she is holding within her hand the Holy Grail. This is in her right hand, the right hand associated with the spiritual side, or the right brain, which is symbolic of the creative side of life and so on. And the Holy Grail, it has flowing into it a substance which almost looks like blood, and yet it's mixed with a yellow substance as well, and it appears to be coming down from what's said to be the moon. This is an intermingling of energies. You've got the sun's energy, you've got the moon's energy, you have in there everything. It's life itself. The Holy Grail, of course, as we saw earlier within Crowley's Thelemic belief system, is about the blood of life itself, the actual mysteries of life itself. And so you've got this intermingling of all these vibrations: sun, moon, female sexual fluid, male sexual fluid, birth, death, rebirth. Everything is meant to be shown in this Holy Grail that she is rising above her. And of course the rising above brings us back to the Kundalini once again, and some have even suggested that you can see, if you look carefully, the shape of the Kundalini serpent rising out of this Grail. Over in her left hand she's holding the reins, the red reins, the left brain being the physical and the material. And so the Holy Grail is that great spiritual entity, so that's held in the right hand, and the reins are held in the left side, so she's controlling here her physical side. And so the reins are also red, and this is the passion of that lower world. This represents her sexual connection, or what they would say is the lower nature. And that's not meant to sound derogatory. There's nothing low about it as such, but low in terms of alchemy and in terms of spiritual rising, the base carnal instincts. You can see a lion serpent here in a prominent position, quite a fantastic looking creature. This type of figure on these cards is almost always a phallic symbol, and of course this being a Scarlet Woman, the Scarlet Woman's actually looking at this being. She's like looking up towards it, and there are 13 rays of light emanating from what looks like a sun head image behind the actual serpent. And so it's a phallic symbol, and it's a symbol of arousal and, again, physical sexual contact. The 13 rays could stand for the Hebrew word for love, which is achad, and we've heard before within Thelema that love is the law, love under will. Crowley believes that there is the power of love can unite everything. It's the most powerful bond, and all else is illusion, essentially, which is something that we've heard, I'm sure, in other types of literature as well. There are 7 heads upon this large beast of which she is riding on. These are symbols, apparently, of Aleister Crowley himself, and yet perhaps you can see some of yourself, or aspects, or like to look in a mirror, if you like, within it as well. But they are meant to be Crowley, and so the angel represents his goal in life. The angel is his spiritual soul, his holy guardian angel. The saint being his connection to the Gnostic Catholic Church, the Gnostic Mass, and all that powerful esoterica that comes along with it. The poet represents his interests, his writings, his poetry, his love of that literature. And there's also the man just representing Crowley himself. And there is a satyr, the satyr being that case of lust. This is connected to Herne the Hunter, the green man, that wonderful phallic, sexual Greek mythology type god, which you've seen in these type of images such as this. And in that case as well, the actual Scarlet Woman herself could be connected to Crowley and representing his sexual interests. Of course, she is looking upwards towards the serpent, and also towards the top of the card itself. And at the top of the card you can see a horizon. A horizon, in terms of symbology, almost always meaning a new path to follow, a new dawn, a new day has started. Let's go out and seize that day. It's a very positive and a very fulfilling type of symbol. You can see 10 circles emanating from around this horizon, and these are the 10 Sephiroth of the Tree of Life. So when we see that 10, it's almost always something about the Tree of Life, the 10 separate Sephiroth. So this is saying that everything is complete. It's the entirety of the universe. Our life is spiritually complete within that macrocosm. And when we follow that road into the horizon, there's those 10 Sephiroth, and so we're completing a soul's purpose. We're completing our moulding of microcosm and macrocosm. There are also 10 horns around the top of the card. It's quite an interesting symbol. Some have suggested that they are serpents, and yet they do appear rather to be horns, and they are said to be horns. And so in that case they are representing the horns of the actual beast itself, and these horns are destroying the old world and opening up into that new horizon. So they've cut through the veil, they've spliced through the veil, and oh, there's that new horizon that we can go through. The bottom of the card shows something similar with the actual feet of the beast, or its claws if you like, treading upon these beings behind, and these beings are the old saints. And so the beast is ignoring the so-called sanctity and purity of the saints and walking all over them. And so it's saying that these saints aren't following that path, they aren't enlightened, they're not following that new path that's just opened up, so they're in denial of their true nature. They're trying to say that then, they don't have these sexual thoughts, or they don't have these base desires, and so the beast's just trampling all over them. It's a rather intense symbol, but what it's basically saying is, look, we do have a carnal side to us, we do have a physical side to us, and so much so-called New Age spirituality just throws the scales far too far to one side and says, you should get away with the ego, and you shouldn't have any physical possessions at all, and no thoughts at all, and all this. This card is saying no, we're trampling all over that. We do have that side to us, and we have that spiritual side to us, which is everywhere in the entire card, but we also have it in our other hand, the reins of our physical life. And so it's also said, believe it or not, that the figures underneath form another Hebrew character, and this is the Hebrew letter of Shin. Shin being a Hebrew letter which is associated with the Aeon card, which is coming to be much, much later on in the actual deck. But it's talking about the old religions, the old ways, which this card is walking over. It's going towards the new Aeon of Horus, of course, because in Thelema there's so much talk about this new age, this new Aeon of Horus to come. And so the card as well can be simply suggesting the alchemy of sexual transmutations, what they call sex magic, which is the use of this very powerful energy, which of course has to be powerful because it can create a new life and transmute it and put it into the pathway of becoming spiritually enlightened and spiritually aware until that new aeon actually awakens within our life, which is that horizon, that new horizon on the card. And so by transforming ourselves through the power of love at the highest form and sexual energy at the lower form, so again the Holy Grail and the reins, then that old world is destroyed by those horns. The passion is not just sexual passion, it's the passion of life itself and of cutting away the old. And if you are walking on your path and the path is overgrown and you can't get through the path, cut yourself a new path, move on through life and have that passion to create that alchemy of life itself, which is within that Holy Grail. And so if you're to draw this card in your tarot reading, it can mean that. It can mean, have your desire, stoke the flames of your desire, if you like, for whatever will you are trying to manifest. Engage with life in the fullest. Carpe diem, seize the day, have that lust, that love for whatever it is that you want to do. Don't just let life pass you by. Of course, it can also mean a sexual union, a sexual relationship with perhaps a partner that you have come across in your life when you draw this card and all that type of thing. And it can even just mean, to come to terms with your own sexual world and that so-called lower world that so much spiritual practice tries to stop us from enjoying. And look, it's trampling all over it, and it's saying this is part of who we are. The whole universe is of all experience. So let's engage. Let's walk down that new horizon, smash the old, understand and love who we are.